Good evening and a warm welcome to COFP members, the panelists and guests joining us for the first time. My name is Charmaine Bryan and I serve as the Director of Social Media on the COFP board and moderator for the panel discussion this evening. Today's event is the COFP March Speaker Series Choose to Challenge presented by Scotiabank. Thank you to the COFP board members and the Scotiabank Black Employee Network members for organizing this amazing event and putting together this dynamic panel. We will start with the panel discussion for about 45 to 50 minutes. The discussion of the panelists will be their own opinion and not the views of Scotiabank. This will be followed by questions from the audience, and make sure you have your questions ready to type in the chat. Once we wrap up the event, you are invited to stay for networking, and this is a great opportunity to connect with fellow members. So let me introduce the panel. Ladies, as I introduce you, please finish with the following statement: my superpower is and why. First up, let's welcome Deborah Service, Vice President, Service Management, Global Technology Services.
Hello, everyone. My superpower is my power of my breath. It's my superpower because it's actually helped to ground me in many, many situations. It allows me to remain calm and it allows me to think. And so whenever I'm in trouble or whenever I'm nervous, like now, I take a deep breath and everything is okay.
Thank you, Deborah. Second, let's welcome Simone Bates, Director, Client Experience and Digital Transformation, International Corporate and Commercial Banking.
Thank you, Charmaine. So my superpower is higher consciousness, or my faith. And this is because I can tap into a place of calm or a place where I can get wisdom to navigate difficult situations, as well as a sense of appreciation for the many blessings in my life.
Thank you, Simone. And finally, let's welcome Julietta Lynch, Associate Director, Global Business Payments Sales.
Thank you. Those are such good answers. Mine is so simple compared to yours. I would say mine is will of steel. So mental steeliness, if that's the word. And I say that because I can really will myself to do hard things. So that's mine.
Thank you. And all wonderful superpowers. And I am sure they have served you well to get to where you are. And as we go into some more questions, so let's start off with your careers. You've all built successful careers. So can you talk us through your journey? Let's start with you, Simone. You've said in your bio that you're a career banker with 30 years experience ranging from branch management to business banking, marketing, design, and so many other business areas. So I'd love to hear your journey and certainly talk us through what business areas that you've worked in have stood out for you, what you've liked best.
Sure. So thank you, Charmaine and COFP, for having me here today and for having the opportunities to be part of the panel. There have been many insights for me over my career. First of all, I think it's important to enjoy what you do. And I think that as a person who's had 30 plus years of banking for the most part, that it's important always to remember that the choice is yours at each stage of your development. Bear in mind that this is your life. It's not your boss's. It's not the institutions. Ultimately, this is your choice. So for me, the roles that I chose always interested me and were ones that I felt were challenging to me. And as I think about a career path, I think that there is some measure of planning, but it's never a straight path. And there will be new opportunities that crop up and there will be doors that close. And that's just how life is. And it's important to be able to navigate those peaks and valleys. And in doing so, to learn who you are through navigating the highs and the lows. And how you respond to a closed door is equally important as to how you respond to a new opportunity. What does it say about you as a person? Are you even a risk taker, or maybe you're not? And there are going to be decisions, I think, that you will make, or any person will make, that in hindsight, that you may say to yourself, oh, I wish I had chosen differently. And my point here is that this is as much about you as a person as it is about your career. And also important to know that your job does not define you. That was a lesson I learned, I think, along the path, that in disappointment, that you can't hang on to that new career move and base your happiness on that. You also don't want to compare yourself to others. Some people will move ahead faster than others, some won't. Quick note that I remember saying to my son once, how come I'm not Mother Teresa? And he's like, there's only one. So the point is, there's going to be only one CEO or only one VP for the X role. So, look at the glass half full. What's in it for others is not necessarily for you. And I also think it's important to look at how you define success for yourself, because that's going to be the measure of your level of happiness through life. Thank you.
Such key points there, Simone, especially what you said about your career not defining you. And I think so many of us, and that's what we think about. And there's, we are so much more of a whole person. So thank you for that. And next up, Deborah, I'd love to hear about your career journey. And I know that you've gone through different industries, your technology, media, and now banking. So let's hear how you've seen through.
So for myself, technology was not the path I landed on when when I was in school, took programming, failed badly, decided that I hated computers and would never touch a computer again. That was how I started in technology. This in my head was not my path. I was going to be, a psychologist or something else, anything else other than being a career technologist. I needed to make money to work my way through school. And so I actually took a job doing data entry. And being a kid and being curious, I would break things. And I met a man who told me, in a sense, that I would be a really good techie. And he invited me to start that journey with him. And, it's funny, when you're going down one path, the world, the God, entity, whatever you believe in, has a way of putting you on the right path and making sure that you wind up where it is that you're supposed to be. And literally, my meeting that first mentor, that first person that helped me, put me on this path and actually opened up my abilities or turned me on to the fact that, hey, listen, technology is not only about programming and coding. There's a whole other world that's available. And yeah, you're really good at that. So maybe you should pursue that as a career. And so I did. I took a chance. And you have to understand that I took a chance against the advice of many. And I basically ignored a lot of the naysayers and kept on down the path. And that path actually took me through working with technology companies, working in the banking industry, working in the media industry, and again, back to working in the banking industry. I've always been a technologist since I started down that path. And so it's been gratifying to see how much technology at its core, at its foundation is the same. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, how you support systems, how you use systems are fundamentally the same. And so the skills that you learn are applicable no matter what industry you work in. That's it.
Oh, thank you, Deborah. It's interesting when you think about how many of us start our careers not imagining that we would end up doing what we're doing. I've heard that time and time again. But it's the same thing that, you can use transferable skills in so many different industries. Well, I'm seeing a theme here across this panel. We seem to be panelists of risk takers. So, Julieta. So, Julieta, how much of a risk taker are you? You've worked in both banking and strategy consulting. I can imagine that there must be some aspects of risk that you've gone through in your career journey.
For sure. And I'm listening to the stories, and my story is different, but the theme is the same. I started in banking, and then I moved into some consulting, and I'm back in banking. That time is almost 20 years. I was looking back thinking that's crazy, but it's almost 20 years, and with different stops, different doors that opened and closed along the way, different messages that I had to listen to along the way. But to compare consulting versus banking, I think is different because I've evolved. Thankfully, I've evolved over that time period, and the industries have evolved. So it's not, static consulting versus banking. What I wanted to share was my perception of the culture in banking from 20 years ago to what I'm seeing today. And it's an openness. And if I had to put in one word, it is openness today. It's an openness for diversity. It's an openness for inclusion. It's an openness to have the conversation of diversity and inclusion. And what's really impactful to me is who's having that conversation. It's coming down from the most senior executives, from the office of the CEO, with a positive waterfall effect to all bankers. And if this conversation was had 20 years ago in the banks, I didn't hear it. So experiential difference is really that openness in banking today. And I'm very happy that this is where we're at.
To hear that things have moved on in 20 years and we can have these conversations.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to Simone. So the theme of International Women's Day and this event is Choose to Challenge. So what does that mean to you, and how are you demonstrating this to create stronger pathways for women in finance?
So the Choose to Challenge theme is definitely a call to action, not to be complacent. And so I ask myself, what do I need to challenge within myself? And equally, it's also a challenge to the status quo, specifically when you refer to the stronger pathways for women in finance. In my career, I've had the opportunity to establish a women's initiative in Trinidad, where I'm from originally. And that was 15 plus years ago. And I mentioned that only to say, and similar to what Julieta has been talking about, it's taken us time to get to this point. And I think it's important to recognize that some of these changes require time. Obviously, we don't want a very long time. I think the tagline this year in some of the ads was said before. So it's been many years we've been seeing this, and not to be daunted by the fact that it's not quite where we want it. I think it's equally important to recognize the achievements that we have made, the achievements that we have made as women, and the achievements we have made together with our male counterparts. I don't think that this would have been possible without our male partners. And equally, I do want to say that as women, we've also achieved a lot. This has been at the forefront of many women, including all on the panel and many listening here today, to make sure that there is gender equality. And so in terms of creating those pathways for women, apart from the Women's Initiative that I mentioned, I continue along my journey to see and seek and look for opportunities to give back and to participate in the movement for gender equity, if not for myself, but certainly for the generations to come. My role, I guess, at this point in time is more focused on mentoring of individuals. I do participate in diversity and inclusion councils and equally on the Scotia Black Employee Network. And so to me, these are avenues to be able to facilitate that change.
Oh, thank you, Simone. As you mentioned that, I did have a question actually for all the, as you've brought that up, let's go there now. That when I read about all of you, you're all involved in diversity inclusion panels, women's initiatives, Black employee networks. So I'd love to hear from Deborah and Julieta. Why do you participate in these initiatives, and why would you recommend others to get involved?
Do you want me to go first, Julieta? All right, I'll go first since I'm unmuted. So it's amazing to me that we're in 2021. We're in the 21st century, and this is the conversations that we still continue to need to have. And it's funny because I remember being young and eager and convinced that the world was changing, that everything was going to be different. And here I am later in my career, and we're still having this dialogue. We're still having this conversation. And what I believe is that we have made significant progress because, women in tech, Black women in tech, wow, we've made progress, but we're still not at the point yet where there is true equality for all. And until we get to that point, it's necessary to continue to have those conversations to further advance the cause, to make sure that we all move forward so that those that come behind us can have that easier road one day, where this won't be a topic in their conversation one day. That's the hope. That's the reason why I participate and why I encourage others to participate. We all have a part to play in advancing us as a nation, as a culture, as a people, as a gender forward, so that this doesn't continue to be a topic of conversation. It would be great if, when our great-granddaughters go out into the world, they would laugh at us and say, "You used to do what?" And this is not the topic for her. She will know she's equal.
I'm agreeing with you on 100%. And I do it for those reasons, and I do it because I can. Really, that's my first answer. I have not always been in a position when I can contribute. I came to Canada with my family when I was 6. I didn't speak English. I didn't have voice, so you can't even connect. And from then on, many experiences of being the other where I could not. So because I can, it is a privilege to be able to give time, to give energy, ideas, to try and make a dent. I don't know how much of a universal dent I'm going to make, but to try and make a dent with a higher purpose, and with impact that outlasts me, goes to the next generation, and that the end goal is, as you said, Deborah, that this conversation is moot. It doesn't have to be had in the future. So that's why I do it. Yeah.
I have no doubt that you are all making impact, and I, like you all, I wish for this conversation not to exist. And what we do today contributes to that tomorrow. So Deborah, despite more women breaking through the glass ceiling, it is even more challenging for Black women. How have you been able to move through the leadership ranks as a Black woman? How have you overcome any challenges you may have faced? And what are some of the tools you've used to do that?
So for myself, I would not have made it without support and good sponsors. The funny thing is that glass ceiling is only really accessible if you're allowed to get there by the gatekeepers. And the gatekeepers in most cases are men, right, that are in their roles, that, you know, have the opportunity to understand what you can contribute and how you can contribute, and say, you know what, this person is a good person to have on the team, and allow you to actually participate and move forward. And it's not just men, other women that actually have made it to the upper echelon as well, they also have the obligation and the ability to be able to open the doors for others. People that are trying to move through the ranks, normally you don't get there just by hard work. I'm sorry to tell you that. You don't get there just by hard work. It's who you know, the relationships you've built, and the level of support that you have, even from people that may not know you personally, but have observed the fact that you've done your hard work and that you're a value and an asset to an organization, and they will help you to advance. In terms of, you know, the challenges that I've had to overcome, it's finding my voice. You know, you actually have situations where you're in meetings and, you know, you're so nervous that you may be quiet. And you have to have a voice. You have to be able to speak out and to be able to make people hear what it is that you have to be able to say. I needed to do that because I'm naturally an introvert. And I had to really find and own my voice and understand that what I have to say is no less valuable than anyone else around the table, right? It is as valuable. And actually having the support of good sponsors and good leaders and good managers that encouraged me to express myself, that actually helped me a lot. Some of the tools that I've used to overcome some of the challenges that I faced, well, there's the breathing part that I learned. But I also learned to rely on my support system, to rely on my friends, to have conversations with people that are going through similar challenges that I am, to get different perspectives. But always I knew that I needed to be true to myself and my own perspective. And I always understood what amount of risk I was willing to take in order to be able to accomplish the things, the mission, what initiative, whatever it is that I set for myself. I understood that that was my path and I had to step on it and deliver it.
Wow, incredible. I can only imagine, but it sounds like you found your voice. And I think that's what really stood out to me there. It is nerve-wracking speaking up, and I suppose probably being one of the only in the room, especially in technology, must have been challenging.
Oh yeah, especially when you're the only woman in the room and you're around a table full of men. Yeah, you can get quieted down really quickly if you don't find your voice.
And Julieta, what is your leadership style and how has it worked for you and against you? And what advice would you give women seeking to advance into leadership roles?
Okay. And thank you Deborah, I have questions for you, but maybe I'll save them for the end because that was pretty powerful. For leadership style, there's what I think it is. So I'm not sure if that's what it is, but this is what I would like my leadership style to be. I would like it to be enlightened, and I would like to be seen as an enabler. And this is an evolution for me because with my steely will and getting things done on my own, I've been very successful in the past as a single contributor, driving it and making things happen, executing on my own. And that energy has to shift significantly when you're leading others. And I learned that, and I continue to learn that through my children. They're my teachers for that. And they really, I put it down into sort of two things that they continue to teach me. One is that I need to meet them where they are at and not where I want them to be. And the second is that my goal is to set them up for success, for their individual success, which looks different for each of them. Again, not where I may want it to be. And the daily work around that is being a coach and a teacher, a listener, course corrector, all kinds of things, but to the one path, to the one destination, which is that they reach their true potential. And this, I call it parenting playbook, is what serves me in my professional leadership. No different. So enlightened enabler is what I would like to aim for. And my advice for women seeking leadership roles, I have again two nuggets of advice. The first one is, don't wait for the title. Leadership is an action, and it looks like putting your hand up for a stretch assignment, joining a committee, using your voice on that committee, sharing an idea, offering support, and tying with our theme today, choosing to challenge, which is the hardest thing to do. When you choose to challenge without title, your leadership shows in spades, right? And if it's not applauded, if it's anything but applauded, then I would question your environment, but never your decision to choose to challenge. So that's one thing. Don't wait for the title. The second one is self-promote. And I think we talked about it. All of us are kind of touching on that, where you have to broadcast your own abilities. And 20 years ago, I actually thought that was a very ugly thing to do. When you talk about how great you are all the time, it's not gracious. It's not the way it works. Your work speaks for itself, right? Wrong. You have to self-promote. You have to be your first cheerleader. So codify, write down your leadership activities on your development plan, what you've done, what you would like to do on your resume, talk about it on your one-on-ones, in your coffee chats with your mentor, with whomever. So broadcast it, not all day, but be your own first cheerleader. And amazing things will start to happen when you start acting like the leader and talking about it, is people see you as the leader, right? It makes it very easy for people of influence, whether HR or not, but people in influence, to see you as that leader. So you're connecting the dots for them. So that's my advice for women and men, I guess, for anyone seeking leadership positions, is to start acting like it and talk about it.
So you make it, huh?
No, I agree with that. I think it's so true. They're acting as a leader even when you don't have a title, because then it eventually leads to a title. So I think that's such a key action to take away. So if you are not a leader officially, start acting like one and advocate for yourself, because that's so important. Yep. I think with our work, we think, we're doing great work and everyone knows it's great work, but you need to tell people.
Took me a long time to realize, but
Okay, Simone, we've been working from home for a year, and it's taken away the in-person interaction and informal networking that happens in the office. If someone wants to get visible, how can they do that while they're virtual, and what would attract your attention?
So it's quite funny you should ask that, only because last week I had a virtual call with someone that I did not know. And she was referred to me by a fellow colleague asking if I would be willing to chat with her. So I did receive her resume ahead of time just to understand a bit of her background and, possibly what sort of conversation we would have. And we had an extremely engaging conversation. I believe she's on listening in today, so happy that she can even hear the impact that she had on me. We certainly connected, was able to explain more about the project that I'm leading right now. There's no promise of a job, however, is a key resource within the organization, certainly someone that would fit within my team. And if ever an opportunity came up, she would be someone that I would be tapping on the shoulder. So I saw it as a win-win situation. She got the opportunity to chat with me, certainly offering her the opportunity to not only understand more about the project, but also saying to her that if I hear of anything, and even if I don't have something, that I would be happy to put her name forward. So I think she was a brave one, stepping outside of the norm, asking her colleague, and my understanding is she's asked other people likewise to have that virtual chat. So I encourage others to be brave. Having the referral certainly made a difference to me. However, I don't think that it's a must-have. I think that my experience across the bank is that people are willing to chat and to have that connection. And, I can only see it as a positive one.
That's great. And I think that's the fact that she was brave enough to do that, because so many people don't. And when you are brave enough to do that, it's amazing what opportunities can happen, not necessarily in the moment, but down the line. So I always applaud people who put themselves out there and introduce themselves. Cold calling, whether it's inside your organization or indeed reaching out to people on LinkedIn that you don't know. And Deborah, so you did start talking about this earlier, building your own boardroom of advisors. This is something that's been recommended when you're advancing your career, and you spoke about having a sponsor. So I'm assuming this is something that you have done. And how did you go about doing it, and what recommendations would you give to others who want to build their own boardroom of advisors?
So it's definitely something that I've done. I have been very, very, very fortunate in my life in that I've had friends and peers that are in similar roles and similar circumstances that could serve as my board. And we acted as sounding boards for each other. Some serve on the board on boards of other companies. There are other VPs, but they always had had the ability to listen to me whenever I needed them. I remember fondly when we could, getting together for those dinners and conversations, and where you basically chat about the challenges that you're facing with whatever it is, either a project initiative or even a person, or you really want to make a change or move in the career. Do you think it's a good idea? And you have your board that basically gives you their advice and their perspective that you then consider. It's incredibly, incredibly important that you have that, because you need that external guidance. And, I agree with Simone when she said that the decision is always yours. It is always your life. But in order to ensure that you're taking into consideration all of the different angles that you cannot see by yourself, it's always good to have advice coming in from external sources. And as you move up the ladder, that becomes more and more and more important, right? That circle that you build, they'll watch your career, they'll be invested in your success, and you maintain it and you support each other so that you continue to be successful. Mentorship is awesome. I've had many different mentors throughout my career, and I've had many different sponsors throughout my career. Many of the sponsors I did not meet, but some project or initiative that I did for them impacted them in a positive way, and they remembered. And when opportunities presented themselves in places that I was not a part of, my name was brought up. Consider this person, consider Deb for that. And I got a call or a tap on the shoulder. Are you interested in doing this? And I would say, yeah, sure, why not? Never done it before in my life, but what the heck? I'll give it a shot. Right? And, again, that support system that you've built, you'll go to them and you'll say, you'll never believe what happened. There's this opportunity. What do you guys think? And you'll get the negative, the good, and your board should be people that will tell you negative things, people that will tell you positive things, and those that will be in between. You want it to be a well-rounded board, reflective of your mind, so that you can actually get all the perspectives so that you make an informed decision about your life. I hope that helps.
Yes, that does. From what you were saying there, it's saying yes, even if you don't know what you're doing, because when you have those board of advisors around you, they can help you.
Yep.
And also, it's those people recognize your strengths that you don't necessarily see in yourself and will push you to do things that you probably wouldn't dare to do.
Exactly.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
The same from before about the sponsors. I think I'd like to hear from obviously Deborah, from Simone, Charmaine, if you wanted to share. Sponsorship is so big, right? Like everyone talks about it, but it's also so hard to identify because you don't ask for one, right? You're almost chosen by a sponsor. Do you know who your sponsors are, and do you need to know who your sponsors are?
No, you don't. You don't need to know who they are. Sometimes you're lucky and you find out that they sponsored you, but you don't need to know who they are. You benefit from their sponsorship, and they benefit by the good works that you do because they sponsored you.
Okay.
Wouldn't mind adding,
Yes.
Julietta, that I agree with Deborah. You may not know who all your sponsors are. However, what I have done in the past is if I'm applying for a job, I may ask certain key people or say to them, listen, I'm applying for this role and I hope I have your support. Simply because either as a reference or just by way of being able to communicate through the interview process that you've worked with, X or Y, and they're available if you wanted to chat with them to learn more about me, anything to that effect. That I think has a positive impact just in terms of your interview or any discussions that you have with respect to a role. I do want to add to what Deborah said as well. Certainly having a strong network and support system is key. My own experience was that I had sponsors or people who strongly supported me and they left the bank or they went to new organizations and were no longer within Scotiabank. So I didn't have that opportunity to say, well, talk to Mary or John because they just weren't there. So I think that you shouldn't sleep on it. You need to actively work that sponsorship or those relationships. Similarly to mentors, whether it is that you may have, I'm not sure if we lost Julieta, you may have one mentor or more than one, and that may work well for you. But I think we need to continue that networking and continue to develop and deepen relationships with people across the organization.
I think I'm talking too much, so it just cut me off.
No, I fully agree with what you're all saying, and I think it comes down to this as well. I always say it's about defining your personal brand and then having that consistent message that you're putting out there all time, so that when you're not in the room, someone else is conveying that message, so that you're in control of what others are thinking about you, if possible. So just wrapping up to the last questions before we go to the audience questions, what legacy would you like to leave, no matter how big or small?
For me, it's about being true to yourself. I think at the end of the day, you look at yourself in the mirror and you're the only one you got to please. And so whatever decisions you've made, good or bad, whether you've been through tough times or not, you want to be able to look at yourself and feel good about what you've done and who you are as a person.
For me, I would like to have the young women that follow me be proud of the actions and steps that I've taken, and understand, like someone says, that I've been true to myself and I followed my path, and that I encourage them to do the same.
I'm going to answer like a Scotiabanker, and again, comparing to when I was in banking before, and one of the reasons why it was not so motivating 20 years all of the work that we're doing around ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance, is very motivating to me as a human, as a parent. And if I can move the dial even a little bit on what we're doing around inclusion and governance, I would be very proud to leave that legacy behind.
Well, I have no doubt that you are working hard towards that. Final question from me. So when you're not being boss women, how do you enjoy your downtime?
Well, I used to travel. Before COVID, I would take off and go see the world. I've actually been all over the world. Since COVID, reading, walking, relaxing, trying not to work too hard. It's not hard to do that. It's harder to do that than you think when you are on all the time and accessible all the time from home.
Had to happen. My thinking is also pre-COVID, like before COVID and now. But mine is more on the slowdown of the past year, which I like very much. I like that there's no rush. Before it was just a constant, not so much travel, but it was like 2 different schools with drop-offs and pickups and activities and calendars. It was always a rush, and now there's no rush, and I like it. I like to be present. I know the window with my kids this age is very small. I enjoy it. I like spending time with them. And then if there's a sliver of something I can do just for myself, I also like to read, like real books, old school real books. I have one, and I have it on my desk because it reminds me I need to read it. So the one I have now is Bill Gates, How to Stop a Climate Disaster. So hope they can get to that before he writes his next one.
So I like my quiet time. Doing nothing is an achievement, as easy as it sounds. And I also enjoy watercolor painting. So that's how I spend my time.
Doing nothing, I think, in a pandemic is perfectly acceptable. Well, thank you, ladies. I'm going to head over to some of our audience questions. So the first one here is from Laura May. What is the one piece of advice you've received during your career that you immediately took on board fruit?
I can answer that one for me. It's easy. When people are paying you money, you are the expert. I was told that at the very start of my career when I was unsure of myself. And it's very true. When people are paying you money, you are the expert.
Agreed, 1,000%. My first thought that came to me was early on in my career was to speak up early on in my career. So not to wait until you're a certain stage or level or ready to speak up early on. And I took that on and I used it sort of throughout. So that would be my advice. Whatever level you're at, but especially if you're more junior, do speak up and start using your voice early.
For me, it was what is a day when you consider a lifetime? And that really was driven based on the fact that I'm usually very anxious to get to a decision really fast. And sometimes you just got to wait. And a day is nothing when you consider a lifetime. So it's to be patient. Strong message for me.
So true. Hey, during the course of your career, there are many peaks and valleys. What were the steps that were taken to overcome the closed doors / career setbacks?
I will say that when I talk about looking inward and understanding who you are, that was important for me. When you get repeated closed doors, it could be a point where you can get angry and you can be so hurt that you want to lash out or you become bitter, and that does not serve anyone well. So that for me, it was recognizing that yes, it was a closed door, but it was also an opportunity, and to look for what that opportunity was in that situation and to move on, to let go from that particular one expectation and know that, as I mentioned, it didn't define me. It did not mean that I had failed or lost out, but that there was more for me to work towards, and that I had to let go of that and move forward with new ambition, with new hope, and recognizing that it was a learning opportunity.
For me, it was an understanding that failure doesn't kill you. It really doesn't kill you. It can be educational. And if you choose, you learn your lessons and you can choose to try again, or you can choose to try a different path. And I've had to do that many
Yes.
But it's amazing how freeing when you understand that, yeah, you can try and fail. That's okay. It's what you do with what you've learned from the failure that's important. How you react, how you get up, and how you represent. That's the important part.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And I would only add, learning to see it as not even failure, right? It's a gift. You have the gift of that lesson, of that experience. And that was my hardest learning because of my steely will. I'm just going to do it. And because that's what it's supposed to be. And to understand that there's a lot of lessons. And if you listen, there's a grace in the gift that's been given to you. So I don't even want to call it failure. Yeah. Like, it is for you to learn. And when you approach it that way, I mean, your eyes are open to every opportunity. Every opportunity is for you to learn and to grow. So learning to welcome that at each turn is my big lesson.
Yeah, not being afraid to fail means it just gets you to your next success quicker.
Yeah.
What is the best way to gain allies? This is from Patricia Lewis. What is the best way to gain allies? We realize that in this climate, having an ally in the workplace is so important.
Have lots of chats, because that's what you can do remotely.
Yes.
The interesting thing is everyone seems to think that those that are in senior level positions are remote and that they won't want to talk to you. It's not true. If you reach out to someone and say, I'd like to get 30 minutes on your calendar or 15 minutes on your calendar to really just learn more about what you do or to start that relationship building, they'll find time for you. I learned that from my boss. He always had time. He says that my door is always open. I say that to my people all the time. The door is always open. And the funny thing is that we really mean it, but people don't take advantage of that because, they doubt that, yeah, they say it, but they don't, but that's how you start to build your allies, right? You need to reach out to those that may not know you, do a lot of the self-promotion, introduce yourself, so that people do get to know who you are, because otherwise they don't have visibility of you. They don't see who you are if you don't reach out. And unfortunately, if they don't know that you're there, they can't reach out to you. So that's
and maybe like spin the question, like what can you give an ally versus how can you get an ally? Like what can you give? Whether it's to a peer or to a senior person or someone you don't know, and that giving very quickly will manifest in you having allies.
Yep.
Yeah.
What mentorship programs are you or have you participated in, and for what associations?
So there was one, sorry, I don't even know if it's still within the bank, but there's certainly a program that was set up some time ago as a mentoring program. I believe it's more informal at this point in time. However, I don't think you need necessarily a formal structured program to be able to participate in mentoring. And you can, reach out to individuals, just sort of following up on the previous conversation, to see if you can identify a mentor or someone that you can work with as far as developing yourself and your career.
And I know that there is a formal mentorship structure, because I'm mentoring a few people under that structure today, inside of Scotia. And Scotia has a vested interest in connecting people who want to be mentored with people who want to mentor others. And so they've actually recently kicked off like the first cohort. Is that a good word to describe the effort of that? And it's currently ongoing. I think it lasts for about 6 months, and then a new cohort will come through. So that program does exist within Scotia, and I participate in that.
Okay, and do you have any words of advice for senior Black leaders, which are a rare commodity, and especially senior Black women leaders, even rarer, when they may feel uncomfortable vocally supporting / sponsoring emerging Black or racialized talent for fear of what other folks might think?
Yeah, get over it. Listen, we have to promote as well. We have an obligation to promote people that are good. I'm not saying promote because of, you know, the person is black or, you know, they're a woman or whatever. Don't do that. But if the person is genuinely good at what they do, adds value, can be a benefit to an organization, it doesn't matter their race, their sex. You should be speaking up about them. You should be advocating for them. You should help to ensure that they get to a place where they're visible so that they can benefit everyone. And in doing so, you actually benefit the race, the gender, and everything else.
Absolutely. And last question, has your definition of success changed over the years?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. You different things at different stages, at different points in your life define success. And you know, it's funny, as I would achieve one goal, I would go, okay, I've achieved that goal. Okay, time to start a new goal. Because that's how you live, right? You need to challenge yourself to reach for the next objective, to reach for the next goal. And as you challenge yourselves to reach each of those different milestones, you find that, yeah, what you thought may have been important at some other stage, you've gotten it. It's not, it's not as satisfying. I need to set for something else. And you evolve.
Yeah. The build and the climb is exciting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I also find that when you're younger, there's a definition of success that's sort of given to you by society, by parents, by whatever, and you follow the script until you realize that, right, you have your own script, and that's what the finding your voice and finding your place comes into play, and happiness in your present and accepting the grace of the lessons, and all that comes together, and you are successful every day. Right? You are successful every day. And it doesn't mean you don't keep climbing and building. You still do that, but it's sort of, you're the one who's driving it. It's more on your terms. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the point that the job does not define you. I think initially, or as we're younger, everything is about getting the job, the whatever, and you get those, and either you learn that it didn't bring you that amount of happiness as you initially thought, or you don't get it, and you start to think, well, okay, is happiness or success defined by this or not? And so you start to change your concept or understanding of what's important to you, and therefore what you define as success. So it does change, I think, as we mature and as we get some of those knocks in life. And possibly the upsides. It all colors our view of life and of the world.
Well, thank you, Deborah, Simone, and Julieta, for your time this evening. This has been a wonderful discussion. Thank you for your stories, your knowledge, your insights of women in leadership. You've given us all many nuggets and takeaways to go on action. And thank you to members and guests for attending this evening with us and contributing to the discussion with your questions. We invite you to stay for networking, and you can access it to the left-hand side of the screen. It's speed networking, one-on-one style for about 5 minutes, and then you move on to the next person. And we're also inviting you to join us for our events in April. Again, thank you for joining us this evening. Good night and happy networking.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.